Hey guys, it's Liz from the Nail Hub, and I'm super excited to be back with another amazing nail audit. Today's nail audit request comes from Erin, who is all the way from Australia, which is very exciting. So Erin submitted the following info to me. Erin said, I really struggle with my prep work, especially when doing my own sets. I really find it hard to tell what is cuticle that needs to be removed, what is gel that may have flooded, and I didn't get it all, and then when is the prep work quote unquote done? The steps I do for my prep work are as follows. I remove the bulk of the product using a carbide bit, then I gently push the skin fold back with an orange wood stick or sometimes a metal nail pusher if there's a lot on the nail plate. Using a medium diamond bit, I go around the skin fold to clean it up, remove cuticle from the nail plate. I use speeds between 6 and 10,000 RPMs. I then use 180 to 150 grit sanding band, speed of 4 to 5, to gently buff the nail plate and smooth out any remaining product. My biggest issues are overthinking everything, not feeling confident in the bits I use, not feeling confident or sure around what speed to use, effectively cleaning and prepping the nail plate, and creating more work for myself. I have included a short video of my own nails from 2 to 3 weeks ago. I have been ensuring I am using my cuticle oil throughout the day, and it's helped my skin so much. And before and after of my client from today, I'm trying to find an educator local to me so I can do further in-person training, but haven't found one as of yet. I follow and watch many different techs and find it also overwhelming. I've been a nail tech for just over a year now. Any help and advice you have to offer is greatly appreciated. So this is great. And first off, congratulations on becoming a newly graduated nail technician. The first year is the hardest of being a nail tech. So I want you to understand that everybody goes through that. Everybody goes through this absolute gauntlet of trial and error and trying to figure out how to do everything that we're expected to do and catching up with all the people that have been working for many years before we ever got into the industry. So I just wanted to let you know that it's totally normal what you're dealing with. I myself went through at least 2 years of a huge learning curve, sweating through my shirt every single time I had to use my e-file. And it used to take me upwards of 3.5 hours to do a set of nails. So if that makes you feel better, I hope it does. Let's also show the pictures that Erin submitted. So I think Erin, your application looks pretty dang good and the cuticle work looks nice and clean. I think what you're curious about, if I were to boil this down after reviewing some of your pictures, is how to get the application closer to the skin upon freshly applying it. And based on the videos that you submitted, I can tell that you're trying to really get an ultra clean result, but you're getting a little hyper fixated on some things that I don't know are really going to move the needle for you. And this is very, very common for beginning nail technicians, is that we are trying to replicate what we've seen on social media. We're trying to achieve a look. However, we don't know how that person actually achieved that. And so we end up kind of going after the same things over and over and over again, just creating more work for ourselves, as you mentioned in your submission. So the tricky part about being a nail technician and a service provider is we're not just doing nails. We have to do nails within a certain timeline. We have to provide the results our client is looking for. And even if, I want to just reiterate this because I've said this before on my channel, and I've provided this education before, but it's always important to just remember this, which is even if you were able to achieve the world's most perfect gel polish manicure that's ever been done, but it took you 3 hours to do it, the client still wouldn't be happy with you. So there is this fine line between balancing the time it takes to do something and the result the client is expecting, okay? Now, average clients, their expectation level of what looks clean and nice is very low, so it's easy to really wow them. And much more than anything, it's how long the nails last. I would say more than anything that really ticks off a client is trying to go after that longevity is going to really wow them. Okay. So even if like this picture you showed where you've got the color just a little bit further away from the skin than you would maybe like, there's always room for improvement there. You can always work on getting closer and closer and closer. And any client really would probably be pretty happy with this application because number one, it's clean. Number two, it's evenly applied. It goes all the way down the sidewalls, which is usually what people nitpick, is they want kind of clean looking skin and they want the color to actually wrap around both sides of their nail and not have large gaps. Neither one of these look like large gaps to me. And also, I didn't include this picture from your submission. However, one of the pictures you submitted to me was nails that were very grown out and they were still well adhered and everything looked super clean. So I don't think longevity is a problem for you. So there's definitely something working with what you're doing. Now, let me break down your list of what you're doing and in which order, because I have a couple thoughts on that. And then I'm also going to use Herman today to show you exactly how to achieve the results that you're looking for. Okay. So let's go back to your submission just for a second. So removing the bulk with the carbide bit is great, especially if you're doing overlays. That's necessary. We have to take off the old color and also get, the old product back into working condition. Pushing back the cuticle skin with an orange wood stick, that's totally fine. I would probably just pick one tool to work with. Switching between metal and orange wood stick probably is a little bit of an extra thing that you have to do. So I would say pick one or the other based on what your favorite is. And I would say probably just go with metal nail pushers because they are a little bit sharper. They're a bit more refined. So you're going to get much more of a scraping action that's going to help you get cuticle off of the nail plate versus an orange wood stick, which a lot of Eastern European nail technicians, if you follow them, you'll see them use orange wood sticks to kind of pry the skin off of the nail plate first. That's okay too, but honestly, I would just stick with one tool to keep it simple. Now, here's where I would reverse your process. So steps 3 and 4, I would actually reverse. And this is because if you're using sanding bands to prep the nail plate, going around the cuticle area with a sanding band, if you accidentally touch any of that skin around the nail plate, you're going to rough it up and it's going to make it look a little bit more ragged. So when you're doing these kinds of product applications, using a 180 grit sanding band is totally fine. And using the slow speed that you're talking about, I know exactly what you're doing. That's a great way to just kind of etch the nail plate. But I would probably just focus on doing that through that main area of the nail plate, staying away from the skin, because what you can do is you can etch the majority of the nail plate first and even kind of blend the old product and get that kind of roughed up so you have the ability to get the new product to adhere well. I would do that first, and then I would go back and do the refining around the skin because that part is going to be much more detailed and you're going to be able to get all the grit and debris and everything off of the nail plate all in one go. And when you go to clean the nail right before application, you're not going to be reintroducing kind of larger grit particles that would come from using a sanding band. Okay, so I would switch steps 3 and 4 based on your process. And that way, the last thing you're doing to the nail plate and the skin is that more refined e-file manicuring. Now, let me show you guys with Herman's finger exactly the way I would actually do this e-file manicuring. Okay, so today Herman's going to help me because Herman has virgin nails and untouched cuticle skin, which is going to help me demonstrate exactly what we're talking about when we're doing e-file manicuring and trying to get a nice smooth result. So the first thing I want you guys to start with is actually pushing back the skin. The reason why I start with this is so that I can get an idea of how far back his natural skin is willing to go, because I'm going to use my bits primarily to smooth the skin and remove a little bit of that dried cuticle material from the nail plate. I don't really want to use my bits to fully push back the skin as it might lead to some tearing. So let's do his middle finger here. I'm just going to take my cuticle pusher and I'm going to try and separate his eponychium, that proximal nail fold area, from the nail plate. And I can also do some scraping to get that dried cuticle off of the nail plate. You can do it nice and slow as well. You can kind of just push back. You'll feel it kind of catch on the actual dried cuticle, but you can do it nice and slow and just push back evenly on both sides, okay? This one, you can see he's got a little bit more of a stretched proximal nail fold, so the skin is a little bit more translucent and kind of adheres and goes out onto the actual nail plate surface. You can use a metal cuticle pusher, you can use an orange wood stick, you can use, we have like stainless steel type orange wood sticks that are really awesome. But basically I'm going to use, maybe I'll use this finger because this is a good example of like having an actual flap of skin to remove. So we'll use these two for the purposes of showing, okay? So this one you can see he doesn't really have any stretched proximal nail fold, that skin that's sticking out. This one, as soon as I push it back, I've got this kind of like flap of skin that I've got to deal with now. And then I've also got that dried white cuticle material on the actual nail plate itself. All right, so let's talk about the purpose of bits and how we want to go about using them. All right, so I'm going to use a typical kind of football shaped diamond bit. This is a fine grit, and this is the Cuticle and Sidewall bit that we have at the Nail Hub. I really like this shape, and really it comes down to a couple things when you're choosing bits. It comes down to the grit that you're going to use. Fine is usually very good for any type of skin or even natural nail care. And the shape allows you to do a couple different things. So I like this one because it does have a slight point to it, so I can get down into the grooves. It's thin enough that I can get down into sidewalls. If you get too big of a bit for this purpose, you're not going to be able to actually get into tight areas. So that's why I prefer a shape like this. And then for actually removing any skin, I like to use this one. We call this our skin smoothing bit. This is also a fine bit. It's red, but it has a nice shape for going around the actual nail plate. All right, I'm going to put my e-file here just so you guys can see the speeds that I'm using. I'm going to start with 15,000 RPMs, and I'm going to use forward, which means I'm going to be working on the left side of the nail from this angle. And one of the important things that we need to think about is as we come through this nail plate, we need to not just come across like this and down, we actually need to kind of come in at a 45-degree angle. So depending on how you need to reposition yourself to be able to do this, you can either tip the client's kind of finger down and away from you in order to be able to do this. And you can also kind of pull back the skin at the same time. So one of the most common mistakes that happens with e-file manicuring is that people put the bit on the actual nail plate and they come across and they're actually like removing portion of the nail plate as they do that. It's going to happen inevitably, but we want to use like a really light touch when we're doing this so that we're not removing unnecessary layers of the nail plate. The big mistake here, and I'll even pause this just for a second so you guys can see it without it spinning. The biggest mistake, especially with bits like this, is coming across here and then pushing into the corner like that. We actually don't want to do that because what's going to happen is it's going to start to shred any of the material underneath and his skin. So what I want to do is just use the very tip of the bit and I'm going to swoop across. And when I get to this corner, I'm going to come in as if I'm kind of swooping out and away, and then I'm going to come down. Okay. So if I'm doing it on the opposite side, I'm going to come this way. I split the finger in half. I'm going to come this way, swoop across, trying to clean up that dried cuticle material on the nail plate as well as the skin. And then when I come to this corner, I'm going to kind of swoop along like this at an angle. I'm not going to go straight across and down, and I'm not going to be pushing into the corner either. I'm going to do this nice swooping motion. Now, if I turn Herman's hand to the side, I'll show you how much of the bit I'm actually using. So let me get focused here. So when we are right here, we actually want to just be using this first tip of the bit, this kind of like first third, if you will. And don't be resting the bit on the actual nail plate. We need to make sure that we're just barely grazing the nail plate and focusing on kind of cleaning and getting that skin out of the way. So angle of your handpiece and your bit is very, very important. All right, so I'm going to start up at 15,000 RPMs. I'm in forward, so I'm going to do from the center over to the left side of Herman's nail. And again, I can kind of like tip his finger away from me. And I'm just going to gently swoop that skin. And then right here in the corner where he's got some dried material, I can come down. When I get down to the corner, I like to go out a little bit with the whole belly of the bit. But very, very gently, because I don't want to remove a bunch of his nail plate, okay? So I'm just going to come in here one more time. And I can even try and get the skin to lift just a little bit, not piercing underneath, but just to kind of prop it up so that it's something that's a flap that I can easily trim off, okay? When I'm working on a client, I actually do every single nail from the middle to the left side. I continue through all 10 fingers so that I'm not constantly switching directions on my e-file. That saves the motor on my e-file, and it also makes it faster for working. So same thing, I'm going to come through. He has less of a flap of skin on this, but you'll see my bit just go right under his proximal nail fold. I'm not pushing underneath there. I'm just swooping underneath there. Very, very gentle. And you'll notice I'm also balancing my hand so that I'm not putting undue pressure on his finger. So this is really, really, really light. It should feel like you're tickling the skin when you're doing this. And again, I can focus on some of these dry areas when I come down the sidewall and just getting rid of those. But the goal here is to kind of just swoop right underneath and clean out any of that dust or debris, okay? So what I want to point out is it's much smoother underneath there and much cleaner. I have less of that shredding happening that can happen when we don't do that swooping motion. And you can also see I'm already starting to etch the surface of his natural nail plate. So I want to be very cognizant of the fact that every pass I'm doing with my e-file, I am going to be removing a little bit of his nail plate. So we want to just do it in as minimal passes as possible and just focus primarily on the skin. So very, very light pressure. Now I'm going to switch my e-file into reverse. So on mine, I just push this little button and then I can put it 15,000 RPMs again. Depending on your e-file, you might want to do a little bit slower. It really varies, but usually something like 10 to 15,000 RPMs is a good number for working in this kind of area. It's fast enough that the bit's going to glide, but it's slow enough that you're not going to actually be overdoing it, okay? So when I'm on this side, I'm going to kind of think about the center over to the right side of Herman's finger. And again, I'm just going to do this like really light pressure and focus primarily on getting rid of that dried cuticle, but swooping around that skin to get it lifted up for trimming, as well as cleaning out any gunk that might be built up along here. Okay, and then I like to kind of go here. Now in reverse, the other thing I like to do is I like to also kind of go along that fold and just kind of flick it up. It makes it that much easier to trim and get it away. And I'm using a motion this way because my bit's in reverse. So I'm just going to very gently push upwards to get that skin out of there. Okay, on this finger, same thing. I'm going to go right from the middle all the way to the right side, swooping at an angle. Okay, so we're going to come and kind of swoop out and down. This is going to help you get that corner out of there. And again, you can kind of just tickle it upwards a little bit to get it away, like so. Okay, so just with a couple passes, I'm able to clean all of this up, and I'll dust off so you guys can see what we're looking at here. Now, one of the things I want to talk about is it is very easy to get so hyper fixated on every single little nook and cranny. You could spend a week doing e-file manicuring on a finger and still not get all of the little pieces that you start to notice. So I want to caution you guys against getting that hyper focus like that, because you're not going to necessarily get a cleaner looking result at the end. All you're going to end up doing is removing too much material. So now what I have is when I lift up his proximal nail fold a little bit, if I just pull it back a little bit, it's nice and clean under there, especially nice and clean for gel polish application. And I also have this nice flap of skin, this keratinized skin that I can easily remove. I have a couple options for it. I can use a bit, or I can use cuticle scissors or a cuticle nipper. So either cutting or debriding it. This finger, same thing, less of a stretched proximal nail fold, less skin. And Herman actually has not very delicate skin. His skin is a little bit what I would call wet or moist. It's like very kind of stretchy. So let's try with a bit first, and then if we want to trim, we can do that. And sometimes it comes down to the amount of skin. If this keratinized piece of skin was any bigger or longer than this, I would absolutely trim it off and then just go back and gently smooth it out. So I'll do some bit smoothing on this finger, and then we'll do trimming and bit smoothing on this one so you guys can see the difference. All right, so I'm going to swap out my bit here. I'm going to use that skin smoothing bit that I really love this shape. I just love it because it has a little bit more surface area. You can also use a ball bit too, but I find that this one allows me to have the same effect of a ball bit while also not having just like a round shape that kind of limits me in certain ways. If you have really wet skin, you can also put a little bit of baby powder, anything like that on here just to get rid of that moisture. And it also helps the bit to glide across the surface. So first off, I'm going to turn his finger kind of down and away from me because I want to be able to come up this direction, and I want to be able to actually smooth the skin all in one direction around the entire nail plate. So I usually point the finger down and away from me, and I'll also kind of pull the skin back with this finger, and this allows me to kind of get that right angle that I'm looking for. And I should see that white line start to come off. Okay. And I'm not filing on the nail plate anymore. I'm just filing on the actual skin. And sometimes you have to readjust a couple times to get the right. Okay, and then when I come across, let me refocus here. So you'll see what I mean by Herman's skin being a little stretchy. So that's why you kind of want to test this out with people and see if they're a good candidate for e-file manicuring. Like my mom is a great candidate for e-file manicuring. She has no issues with it. Her skin just comes off super, super easily. My skin, I'm very, very sensitive. I bleed really easily around my cuticle area. So it just comes down to testing it out. Herman's skin is a little stretchy. So some baby powder would help with that, just to make sure the bit's gliding instead of tearing. But you're able to remove all of that skin with just a bit. Okay? So like that. So nice and clean. So if I wipe this off, let me show you really quick one other little tidbit that helps to get a clean result from the first get-go. I'm going to take a nail wipe and I'm going to put some alcohol on it. And what I'm going to do is I'm also going to wrap my cuticle pusher inside of this nail wipe, and that way I can go and I can kind of push back his skin one more time and get all of that dust out of there. And I'll show you just how clean this really is with just those two bits. So the goal here is, like I said, to be very gentle about how much we are removing in order to get rid of all of that dust and debris. But ultimately the nail's going to look really ugly and chalky the entire time that we're working on it. Okay? So that's basically what we want to see. We want to see no more skin around that proximal nail fold, and we want to see no more cuticle attached to the nail plate, and then we have a very, very nice clean surface to put gel polish on, okay? And this is what makes the big difference between being able to get that gel polish super duper duper close to the cuticle area. This is a nice way to go about doing that, but it does require more time, a little bit more skill, and I haven't even done any like of the shaping or actual nail plate prep, but I wanted to show you just how you need to kind of let some of these things go, because if you look at them under a microscope, honestly, you're always going to see stuff that's back here in this proximal nail fold. And really, if I go back there and I try to even remove some of this, none of it's actually real. It's just nail plate and a little bit of dryness. Herman's other finger, we've got more of a situation where there's like more of a stretched proximal nail fold, more skin. So I'm going to show you guys on this one how to actually trim that off. I personally really like quarter jaw. These are our attain nippers. They're a quarter jaw opening, so you can see like how short the blades are compared to these guys. So these are full jaw blade and these are quarter jaw blade. So it makes it a little bit easier to get in there, but you can also use cuticle scissors if you want to do that. Okay, so with these nippers, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in, and again, I'm going to try and make one nice consistent cut all the way across. If we cut too much on the top, we're going to basically serrate the skin. So we want to actually start underneath and just start here or lower depending on where there's skin, and go perpendicular to that proximal nail fold. Watch the back of your jaw so that you're not pinching the skin back here. You just want to use the very, very, very tip of the blades. Let me back out just a little bit. There we go. Okay, Okay, so then once I have that flap of skin trimmed off, I can go back in with that same bit and I can do a little bit of smoothing. Now this one is a fine grit, which is probably pretty good. I mean, it's pretty smooth for just doing some smoothing. However, there also is one other grit, which is ultra fine. And this is usually best for after you've been trimming skin with nippers or scissors. It's just a little bit more gentle and it's going to do more of a polishing than trying to actually remove any skin. So I'm going to go back in. I have my machine at about 12,000 RPMs. Again, anywhere in that 10 to 15,000 range is usually really good for this. And I'm just going to go in and now just polish his skin. This helps to get rid of any cut marks or any areas that you might have missed. And it helps to get rid of any of that kind of like dried skin that really isn't for trimming. It's just kind of trying to get this all smoothed out. I find this step really makes a big difference on how the cuticle skin grows back. You won't get like tearing and things like that if you actually kind of smooth the skin out. And I also like to always do the skin smoothing down both sidewalls, so down towards the tip of the finger. This really helps. And this is nice and smooth bit, so it feels really gentle. Okay, now same thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my cuticle pusher and a wipe. I like to just do this one last tuck, and the wipe with the cleanser really helps to kind of get any like dust or debris out and just get all of those skin oils and everything out of that pocket. Okay, so just like that, really nice and clean. And again, on camera, I mean, you guys can see this kind of like dryness, but honestly, it's super clean in person. And once we get gel polish on here and smooth this out, it's going to look absolutely phenomenal. So this is something where you could spend a ton of time continually going back and forth, back and forth. My personal preference is to use bits to remove skin. You can see how nice and smooth it is because there aren't any of those cut marks in the skin. That's why a lot of people like cuticle scissors, because you can get much more of like a consistent cut. But for someone like this, I would just do a bit removal with that skin area. And you know, I know you were showing in your video about how you were like able to pull up your cuticle skin and see all of this stuff underneath. I think really where you're going to get the most bang for your buck getting rid of that is working on your angle of your bit. That swooping at a 45 is really going to make a big difference with not actually tearing up stuff underneath from having it be perfectly, perpendicular to it. So this right here is what's going to end up causing a lot of that tearing because you're kind of using that tip. And if the tip is spinning at the same time, you're going to get it kind of tearing the skin as it goes along. So that's why we want to kind of use that swooping motion. It's going to push the skin back and also smooth it as it goes down. Okay, so for the purposes of this video, I'm not going to do a full base and gel polish application because although Herman is no stranger to having gel polish on his nails being married to me, I wanted to show you just what I think you're looking for is how to get that ultra clean application and that ultra clean cuticle look. So I just finished filed, shaped his free edge, and I'm going to show you guys a couple tricks with applying a color. So this is Forest from Attain. I'm just going to use this. I have it right here handy. And what you're going to need is your favorite gel polish, and you're going to need potentially a striper brush. All right, so I'm just going to pretend I have base coat, right? So that's just to be clear. I know I'm not doing this over a base coat. I'm just going to do it for the purposes of showing you guys how to apply this. So when we have this really nice skin, what's nice is we can get super duper duper close to that cuticle area. So I'm going to get really, really close to that cuticle area like this. And then what I can do is just pull this down. I like to coat the whole nail plate, leaving myself a little bit of room for getting that much closer. And I do a very, very nice thin coat so that nothing is flooding as I'm doing this. So I'm just kind of coating the whole nail with a very thin wet layer. Okay. Then what I can do is I can go back and I'm going to take most of the product off of my bristles. I'm going to just show you guys how I do it with just the brush in the bottle. So what I do is I pull back the skin a little bit and I come up and I fan out the brush And I'm going to use the edge of these bristles to just swoop right underneath that proximal nail fold. And you can pull back a little bit while you do this. Okay. There. So what I'm doing is just using those bristles to get right underneath that clean skin that we created. And then I can come down and smooth everything out. So what this does is it creates the illusion that the gel polish is under the skin, okay? Now it's gonna look kind of rough because I don't have any base gel or anything on there, but you can see how clean that is and how it gets right up to the skin. The other way you can do this is you can use a detail brush. So if you're having a hard time doing that swooping with the brush from the bottle, I prefer that because then I don't have to reach for something else. But if you're struggling with that a little bit, you can get your detail brush wet with the same gel polish that's on the nail, because you can always fix this part of the application later, the part that's in the middle. And then what you can do is you can do the same thing with a detail brush where you can kind of paint into those areas with a very, very fine brush and get it as close as humanly possible. And this also helps on the sidewalls. If you have a client that has very, very puffy sidewalls, it helps with these corners. And on this first layer, I'm not so worried about having that perfect opacity. I'm just worried about having a nice application, okay? So you can see how I was able to get that gel polish right up against the skin, and the skin is looking very, very clean. Even if I pull the skin back to reveal where the actual edge of that gel polish application is, when I let it go, that's how you get that look where it looks like the gel polish is underneath the skin. Okay, so the key here is having a clean nail plate so that you don't get hung up on any little scragglies where the gel polish is going to gravitate to. Using either a detail brush to get in there a little bit more, or like I said, using your actual gel polish brush to go in there and swoop around that cuticle area. All right, Erin, I hope this video helped you understand when the work is done, what to actually focus on, what to let go, because there's always something we can also always hyperfixate on. And really where those lines cross between being able to satisfy your client and get a clean result, but also doing it in an amount of time that is reasonable for people to be sitting in your chair, because people do get worn out waiting for those results. And sometimes those lines can start to cross in the wrong kind of way. But in general, when we're doing e-file manicuring and any type of trimming with metal instruments like nippers or cuticle scissors, we want to be very cognizant of how much we're doing. We can easily cut somebody, we can easily remove too much skin. And I do think that technique of swooping around the nail plate is going to help you get a much cleaner result. Also, remember, if you want to add in the added feature of using like a baby powder to help give the bit something to glide on and dry out the skin to get rid of some of that stretching skin, that might really help you. But I think your issue is that you're getting hyperfixated on pulling back that cuticle skin and seeing some kind of dust or debris under there. And that's making you feel like you're not doing a good job, when in reality, I would let a lot of that stuff go. And I would work on those swooping motions to get more of a clean result without shredding any of that skin underneath. Work on using finer diamond bits. I think medium is probably a little bit too much. It's probably tearing the skin a little bit. Use finer ultra fine bits when you're doing your diamond bit e-filing. And then also wait until you get the gel polish on. Give yourself that chance to go, okay, I'm going to spend this amount of time on e-file manicuring, and then I'm going to force myself to move into application to keep my appointment time sharp. And then you can always work on practicing those techniques. Working on yourself obviously is a great way to do it. So use those swooping techniques I showed you, and also play around with the balance between trimming skin with actual implements versus debriding skin with bits, and see which one works better for your skin type. Because like I mentioned, having that kind of stretchy skin that kind of is easy to tear, that is not necessarily great skin for using everything with bits. Sometimes the trimming and using an ultra fine bit to polish the skin does wonders for that type of actual anatomy. So you've got to just do a little bit of testing out different types of skin on different kinds of clients. But I think ultimately, just with these little bit of tricks with the switching the order in which you're prepping the nail plate with your different bits, and then also using that swooping technique with your bit, as well as when you apply the gel polish or using that detail brush, I think is going to help you get a really, really, really clean result that's very close to the skin. And I can't wait to see how this helps you. Definitely follow up with me because I'd love to see some pictures after you put these techniques into work. And I hope this video has helped all of you guys understanding a little bit more about getting those ultra clean nails that we see all over social media and how you can actually achieve them. See you guys next time. Bye.